A brief introduction to Rohinton Mistry, born 3 July 1952, Bombay, India. Occupation novelist, nationality Canadian. Alma mater University of Bombay and University of Toronto. Genre historical fiction, post-colonial literature, realism, Parsi literature, minor literature, and Indian literature. A Parsi Gujarati writer of Indian origin, Rohinton Mistry migrated to the West Canada in 1975 at the age of 23. He worked as a clerk at the Imperial Bank of Commerce in Canada after moving there with his wife. Mindless clerical work, says Mistry about his stint at the bank. To overcome this dreariness, he joined the University of Toronto to study English and philosophy part-time. His first short story, One Sunday, won the Hurt House Literary Award. The following year, he won it again for another short story, Auspicious Occasion. In 1987, his short stories were collected and published by Penguin Canada as an anthology titled Tales from Firozshah Bagh. It was his first novel, Such a Long Journey, in 1991 that established him as a writer of repute. It won many awards: Canada's Governor General's Award for Fiction, the Commonwealth Writers' Award for the Best Book of the Year, and W. H. Smith Books in Canada's First Novel Award. It was also nominated for the UK-based Booker Prize and the Trillium Award. However, his writings returned to India time and again for themes and subject matter. As a writer in a new country and in a different social and cultural milieu, he faces many challenges. He has to make sense of the various spaces he occupies as a Parsi, Indian, and Canadian. In doing so, several questions arise about where he belongs, what is his identity and authenticity, what does it mean to belong to a nation, and how to deal with multiculturalism within a framework of a nation-state. He grew up in a Parsi household in Bombay, and this is what he knows best. When you have grown up in one place and spent the first 23 years of your life there, that's how old I was when I left. It is almost as tough as you are never going to be removed from that place. 23 years in the place where you were born, where you spent all your days with a great satisfaction and fulfillment. That place never leaves you. All you have to do is keep updating it a little bit at a time, and it works. As mentioned earlier, Rohinton Mistry's short stories collection, Tales from Firozshah Bagh, is his first published work, which together describes the daily life of the Parsi resident in a Bombay apartment block. The stories concern themselves with the ordeal, suffering, and the particular characteristic and mannerism of Bombay Parsis. Mistry explores the relationships existing within this community, their cultural identity, and the uniqueness of their community living. At the same time, he attempts to understand and indeed fully embrace the hybrid or syncretic nature of diasporic Parsi experience, whether that is in North America, Canada, or India. Some of the stories deal with the journeys undertaken by some Parsi resident of Firozshah Bagh. Notwithstanding the daring and courage of some of these residents in leaving their homeland for North America and subsequently settling in the West, it is interesting to note that they are also assailed by a feeling of guilt. It must be mentioned that this diaspora, country to the Iranian diaspora, has been fulfilled in a positive way by the Parsis despite the lingering sense of guilt. However, it was with his first novel, Such a Long Journey, 1991, that Mistry brushed upon the literary scene as a writer who showed great promise. This novel won many prizes and established him as a writer of repute. His second novel, A Fine Balance, was published in 1995, which won several awards including the Commonwealth Writers' Prize, the prestigious Giller Prize, the Los Angeles Times Book Prize for Fiction, and the Royal Society of Literature's Winifred Holtboy Award. It was also shortlisted for the Booker Prize like his first novel, the International IMPAC Impact Dublin Literary Award, and the Irish Times International Fiction Prize. This novel is again set in India during the mid-70s when Indira Gandhi had declared a state of internal emergency without consulting her cabinet. The story revolves around the lives of four protagonists who are different from each other and have to live together in the same humble city apartment. Dina Bhai, a widow who refused to remarry and fights to earn merged living as a seamstress. Two tailors, Ishwar and Om Prakash, uncle and nephew who have come to the city in the hope of finding work, and a student, Minakola, from a village situated at the foothills of the Himalaya. Minak's father has sent his son to a city school. As with his first novel, the author mixes historical facts with the characters' private lives. The common perceptions regarding the regime of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi provide knowledge of the political corruption and its effect on the common citizen. The fine balance of the novel's title refers to an ideal state or middle path of being between sympathy and gullibility, kindness and weakness. Mistry's third novel, Family Matters, was as well received internationally as its predecessors, nominated once again for the Man Booker and won Kiriyama Pacific Rim Book Prize. In the same interview mentioned above, he states that Family Matters, I think, has an internal canvas which is as complex as the external canvas of A Fine Balance. That is the only similarity I can perhaps point out, but there are concerns, primarily political ones, which both books share. If you write about Bombay in the mid-19th, especially if you give your characters a political consciousness, it is inevitable that they will sit and talk about what is happening in the city, what is appearing in the newspaper. This novel depicts contemporary Bombay and is set in the 1990s. At the center of the book is an old man, a Parsi Nariman Vakil with Parkinson's disease. He is a retired academic, a professor of English, whose illness strains family relationships. He even compares himself to King Lear at one point. His memories of the past expose the reader to earlier moments in the city and the nation's history in a novel that moves across 3 generations of the same family. The private and public histories intersect in this novel too. Mistry's latest book, The Scream 2008, has been illustrated by the famous Canadian artist Tony Arcott. It is 48 pages long and printed originally in a limited edition of 150 copies that was sold exclusively by the World Literacy of Canada to raise funds for their organization. The story is located in a Bombay apartment and narrated by a man at the end of his life who is angry at the predicament of old age, at his isolation from his family and from a world that no longer understands him. He rants and raves at the unfairness of his situation in a way reminiscent of old Mr. Paskia in Such a Long Journey. His complaints have both humor and pathos. His soliloquies are about aging, which is a universal phenomenon. When a man becomes old and ceases to be a breadwinner, he becomes less influential and important, and more dependent upon others. The protagonist of the scream is such a man who is neglected and misunderstood by his family and society.